Welcome to my work solutions for the WJEC Eduqas. That's without a U, as I keep spelling it. It's from the November 2023 series. They call it Component 1. Everyone else calls it Paper 1, and it's non-calc. So let's get on with it. Firstly, when you are multiplying numbers that end in 0, just do the 2 times 4. Work that out, no matter how small or how big they are. You might need to do short multiplication for it. It might be 13 times 27 or something if you want to do 130 times 270, but it's all good as long as you have the same number of zeros in the question as in the answer. 57 divided by 3, if you know it off the top of your head, great. If not, get it bus stopped and make sure of the correct final answer. When you're finding fractions of a number, there's a couple of ways of going about this. I know some people who would much prefer to refer to it as of means times and write the 30 over 1 and see where that goes. That'll work. That's great. You end up with 60 over 5, final answer of 12. I'll stick with the old divide by the bottom. And when you get that, multiply it by the top. Either way, you get to 12 for 2 marks. 30%, again, there's a decimal or a fraction way of doing this. Feel free, if you are very much a fan of that, you can write the 30% as 30 over 100, and you can even cancel some zeros. It becomes quite nice, but again, I'll stick to bog standard. Find 10% by dividing by 10. To go to 30%, it's 3 times as much, so times by 3. Again, for your couple of marks, 21. When you're adding, you can do it mentally, do it in pounds, as in £12.80, plus a pound is £13.80, and so on. If you'd rather play it safe, stick to column addition. It works, never lets you down, and make sure that you get the right answer. 13.83, just in case your brain does something daft in exam conditions. To convert a percentage to a decimal, it's 8 divided by 100. And I know some people will move the decimal point twice again. Whatever works for you is fine. Smallest possible whole number. So basically, what's the next integer, what's the next whole number above 4.4? It's a 5. To 8, they've given us a lot of space for this, but there's actually no need for all that. They've given you a couple of examples, 10 having 4 factors, 11 having 2 factors, and so on. There's one number. Now, it's one of those things you might have seen already. For example, square numbers like 4. You've got 1 and 4, but you've also got 2. And usually numbers have an even amount of factors because the factors pair up. But then you've got square numbers. They have that extra thing in the middle. They have that extra 1 because 2 and 3 don't have a pair. They are essentially paired with themselves, but you don't count them twice. And that leads you on to, 16. 1 and 16, that's a pair. 2 and 8, that's a pair. But then it's the lonely 4 in the middle, making 5 factors. Your number is 16. And in they go. But it's all to do with the best way to list factors of numbers is to list them in pairs. Write down the first 3 even multiples of 7. Multiples means multiplication tables. Feel free to write out your 7 times table. Never does you any harm. But it's the even ones, the ones ending in 2, 4, 6, 8 or 0, that the examiner is after. Part C. Lisa says, when I round the number of pupils to the nearest 5, I would say start low. Think like, could it be 20? Could it be 21? Nope, neither of them. Could it be 22? The nearest 5 for 22 is 20. So you don't start getting correct answers till you hit 23. And that means 24 also. Now the mark scheme has 25 in brackets because it means they're not bothered whether you left it out or not because the question's not 100% clear. So they're just being nice because 25 is already 25. So there'll be some students out there who basically forgot to include it and they don't want to penalise them. 26 rounds down. 27 also is 2 away from 25, but by the time you get to 28, that's 2 away from 30, 3 away from 25, so that is not one of your answers. There you go. Those 4 numbers, I say 4 again, because the mark scheme, they're the 4 that are a must-have for your 2 marks. Percentage that is shaded. Always consider what fraction. There are indeed 8 out of 20, if you wanted to look at it that way. There are also 2 columns out of 5. Now they're obviously equivalent fractions. However you are used to turning them into, because you might know that 2/5 is 40%. If so, great. If you don't, best way to convert into a percentage is to write the fraction out of 100, assuming the 20 and the 5, assuming you've got a denominator which goes into 100. You need another way to go about it if it was a really awkward one. So here, times by 5, same to the top. On the bottom there, multiply by 20, same to the top. As you can see, doesn't matter which way you go about it, all roads lead to 40%. Number 4, pictograms. Loads of waffle at the top, not interesting at all. There's blanks. There's blanks all over the place. You can already tell what part A is going to be. Complete the whole lot. You need to find what is in common. You'll notice salad is 1. Salad is the only one that's filled in at the top and the bottom. Salad is where you've got to consider, well, if quarter of a circle is 1, a whole circle must be 4. Ham is 4 plus 4 plus 4. In it goes. Chicken is 4, 4 and 2. In it goes. Now let's draw some diagrams. Cheese is 3. That needs to be a Pac-Man shape, if you're old enough to remember him. There we go, 3/4 of a pizza, basically. For tuna, 6. We need a full circle for 4 and a half circle for the other 2. Never forget to complete the key. A full circle is 4 students. What is the modal choice? Don't get confused, it's not a new word. It's just mode and modal, they mean the same thing. We usually see the word modal when they refer to modal group and so on. But again, they mean the same thing. Mode, modal, most popular. Which choice was the most popular? Ham had the 12. That's the most popular. Number 5A, Lucy writes down the first 5 square numbers. Don't wait to read on. Do it. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. It's not a big job. That's what Lucy's done. Lucy chooses 2 square numbers that are 12 apart. Now you've got them written down, it's so easy to see. You can look at adjacent numbers, but no, it is the 4 and the 16, which are 12 apart. Part B, more waffle. Mary adds 2 odd numbers together to get 21. Could Mary's answer be correct? It's an absolute no. What sort of reasoning do you need to put in? Anything, keep it simple. Don't fill up all 3 lines. Just the reasoning that whenever you add 2 odd numbers, you get an even answer. 21 is not even. There we go. Question C, they've given you some room down the bottom, so if you wanted to, I know some people who hate these, I've got students at the moment hates them, line them up. That's the way you'd have been taught in school at some point, maybe a long time ago, and so on. Or think of it as cash. Now I'm in the UK here, so I'll think of it as pounds. We've got £3 there. Now if you scan across, there is no amount bigger than £3. We're done. The next biggest amount, that would be 80p. And now it's between these three. If you have a look, this amount is 30p. This is 30 and a bit pence. And this is 35p. 35p being the next biggest. And between those two, there's an extra 2/10 of a penny on that number. So the 0.302 is slightly bigger than the 0.3. Not because it's got more decimal places, just because it's got an extra 2/10 of a penny. Number 6. 25 players, 10 are already done for you. Don't let simple mistakes cost you marks. Don't be the person who scans down, oh, how many Ashtons are there? Don't do that. Simply go AJO, AOJ, 1, 1, 1. OOJ, OOJ again. OOJ, OAJ, OAJ, and OJJ. OJ, and an extra one makes that a multiple of 5. So Ashton has 8, Jamal has 10, Oliver, last place lad, has got 7. Which player won the vote? Well, you've done it, haven't you? Jamal won the vote. He was the modal, the most popular person. What percentage of? Well, write down the fraction first. Oliver scored 8 out of 25 of the votes. To turn it, 25 is a nice number. As I mentioned on the earlier question, it goes into 100 nice and easily. It goes in 4 times. Do the same to the top. That's now your percentage. I know some people, when they convert them, they'll times it by 100. It'll still work. I would advise cancelling down to begin with. The 100 will halve and so on. But that will work. But for this one, when it's a factor of 100, that is the best way for me. Part B, we have Lindsay doing a questionnaire. You could scan it. How many games have you missed this season due to injury? But ultimately, the problem is what happens if you give the answer 2. Because she's included 2 in 2 boxes. So words to that effect, or simply state the first 2 boxes overlap. It's only worth 1 mark. Keep it short and sweet. Don't overcomplicate. 7A, Robin has a scale drawing and so on. What is the actual length? I always like to pause for a second, say, right, going from centimetres to centimetres, like for like, it's multiplied by 250. Let's take the drawing of 6 and multiply by 250. Now you might prefer you don't like your 6 times table, you want to go for times 3 and double it, all works. Multiply by 6 zeros, 6 fives are 30, 6 twos 12, add on the 3. But don't forget, that's in centimetres, that's in bold for a reason. You need to convert, so we need to we need to divide it by 100. And we get 15 metres, which always check, they can't give you numbers which in the real world sound absolutely stupid or are impossible. 15 metres for a flower bed seems perfectly reasonable. Part B. Hopefully, if you've had a go at this question, you haven't fallen into a trap. It's easy to put 60 over 40, cancel it down to a quarter. I'm afraid not. Robin has 300 flowers. If you add them together, what fraction of, in other words, out of the flowers, are daffodils? There's a careful nuance in the words there. Very easy to go, oh, 60 over 240. I'm afraid it's not. Take the noughts off, divide by 10, in other words. You've now got numbers in the 6 times table. Divide the top by 6 and the bottom by 6. And we've got it in our simplest form. Some rose bushes are divided equally. This doesn't crop up very often. But let's say me and you are sharing sweets out equally. There's lots of answers we could write. We could say that, oh, if there's 20 sweets, I get 10, you get 10, and so on. It really means it's a 1-to-1 ratio. Like I said, I've been doing a lot of past papers. I've not actually seen that anywhere else. It is quite rare. Number 8, good old Best Buy, whoopsie doodle. If I fingered it, Best Buy question. You could convert it to anything you want. You could attempt to scale that up to 1,000 and compare it. You could attempt to scale that down and compare it. I wouldn't. I'm just going to call them A and B so I know what I'm doing. And the amounts of drink, the amounts of lemonade, they're in the 100 times table. That's a nice comparison. 100's a nice amount. To get 100 ml from 1,000, I divide by 10. £2.50 divided by 10 is 25 pence. For the smaller bottle B, if I want to go to 100 ml, that's a divide by 3. Now you might need to bus stop it, but it's not the worst part in the world. So that's 29 pence. And there you go. The mark scheme says they don't care what comparison you do as long as you have comparable amounts. So as I've said, if you went for 1,000 mils, 300 mils, they're all good. I just think that the easiest was to go for 100, and now it's much more obvious that the large bottle A, the 1,000 milliliter bottle, is the best value. Number 9, we have some algebra. Solve. It's just a one-step equation. You need to divide both sides by the number next to x. So 42 divided by 6 is 7. Because when you're solving, it's all about doing opposites, the inverse operations. Calculate the value of 4y. 4y written next to each other means 4 multiplied, if you know it, the value of 12, the value of y, which is minus 12. 4 times 12, 48, and you've got a positive multiplied by a negative. When you are multiplying or dividing, for that matter, if the signs are different, it's a negative answer. Simplify doesn't actually tell us to expand, but you should. Leave the 5w alone. 3 times 6w is 18w. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And it's the amount of w's which simplify. You've got 23 of them, and the minus 6 has nothing to simplify with. A shirt has T number of buttons. Well, if it was 4 buttons on 8 shirts, you'd work out 4 times 8. This is T buttons on 8 shirts. You'd work out T times 8, which should be written as 8T. You don't put letters in front of numbers when you write an algebra. Mark schemes hate it. Number 10, number machines. The input is 10. I like to write on it. We're sticking 10 in. We subtract 3. It spits out 7. It multiplies by 5. And you don't need anywhere near as much working out space as they tell you. We can now reset. The output is 55. When you work backwards, you do the opposite. You inverse operation. So divide by 5 means we're at 11. Subtract 3 becomes add 3. Final answer, the input-output, is 14. Number 11, bread rolls. Adele and Lewis are shopping. Adele has a bag of 5. How much money does she save compared to buying 5 rolls separately? If she's buying 5 rolls separately, she'll be spending 98 pence 5 times. And you could obviously do repeated addition. You could times 100 by 5 and subtract 10. Again, however you get the 490 pence is entirely up to you. How much money does she save? There's 40 pence difference. Do a takeaway if you want, or as I've done, mental arithmetic, because the numbers are pretty friendly. For B, we've got croissants and are 90 pence each. Again, it's quite wordy, this one, so one thing at a time. Croissants cost 90 pence each. Lewis buys 4 of them. 9 fours are 36. That's how much he's spending on the croissants. Lewis has £10. Let's do £10 minus £3. We're at £7. That's £7. Take away 60 pence. Means he's now at £6.40. What am I writing? £6.40 is how much he's got. The cinnamon whirls are £1.25 or 125 pence each. How many can he buy? You could try and error it. You could try a really difficult divide. Not a fan of dividing by 125 though. I would just simply go, well, if he buys 1, it's 125 pence. Add on 125. So I add on 25 and add on 100. Add on 25, add on 100, add on 25, we get to 400, add on 100, and add on another 125. You can see there's no way he can buy another one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if he asked for it, there's 15 pence change. But it's 5 whirls that Lewis can purchase. Number 12. Loads of ways of doing this one. For me, it's the identification that 20 minutes is a third of an hour. So if this generator is running for 1 hour, it generates 390. If it runs for 2 hours, it'll generate another 390. But it also goes for 20 minutes. It'll do a third of that amount. That's 130. If you needed to bus stop that, feel free. Adding all those together will tell you how much. So all the noughts. 9 plus 9 is 18, plus 3 is 21. I know I've not lined it up right, but never mind. 3 is 6, 7, 8. 910 units of electricity is generated. Number 13. They love their waffle, don't they? Ben's buying 90 bottles of water. That's the key. He buys 90. He correctly divides it by 8. He gets 11-ish. He decides to buy 11 packs of water. Is Ben's decision correct? No. Reason, 11 packs of 8 means he's only got 88. He wants 90. He's too short. Okay, you could have said 12 packs should be purchased to get 96, because then he'll have the 90 and he's got 6 spares. So again, loads of ways of answering that one. Part B, let's just not read what Ben's saying. Ben divides 90 bottles in the ratio 4:1. So the first share is worth 4/5. The second share is worth 1/5. So no matter how you think about it, if you were doing ratio correctly on this, you would divide by 5. To work out the larger share, we should divide by 4. There you go. Explain what is wrong with Ben's method. He should divide by 5. If he wanted that amount, then you would times by 4. But it's the divide by 5 bit that Ben's not done, and that's why Ben has messed it up. Number 14, we've got a table of values. They've given you space to work it out if you need to. One thing to mention though, I'll do this the quick way. The number next to x, not when it's in y equals form, the number next to x, the number immediately in front of x, is known as the gradient. But that's also a way of filling in these tables quickly, because it is no coincidence that a table that goes up in ones when the gradient is -2 comes down in twos. Okay, the pattern works, so that you can use that as a quick way. The long way is to take each value of x and substitute it in. Feel free. Part B, on the grid, draw the lines. So each of these should be treated as a coordinate. So the first pairing, plot the coordinate -2, 5, -1, 3, and so on. And the good news is when you're plotting a graph, if they don't line up, because they should always form a straight line, no matter how steep or shallow they are, they should form a straight line. We don't get curves until you start having an x squared in them. So any of these, if you've got a line that goes up and it has a bump in it, you've messed up your table. Okay, so make sure they all line up. And they should look like that. Should cross at +1. Now, one thing to mention, Eduqas are a bit more strict on this than some other exam boards. Do make sure you go right to the edge of your graph. I always recommend, to be safe, go right beyond the edge of your graph. If you stop short, you're not doing what you've been told. You've actually been told to draw the line for x between 2 and -2. That's there to there. So if you stop short, you're not actually doing what you've been told to do, and you'll lose marks. Certainly 1, maybe more, but be careful on that front. Probability for number 15. 100 identically sized coloured balls show that the bag must contain 10 that aren't blue, red or green. The key to all these probability tables is they must add up to 1 if they include all probabilities. If you add those two together, you get 0.72. Add in the green, you'll notice the total of these three is 0.90. So there must be something else, maybe one colour, maybe more, but there's a missing 0.1 of probability, because again, the sum of all probabilities should equal 1. Here's the thing though, it doesn't necessarily ask for that, although you need it to get this 10. Because when you have a probability and you know there are 100 of them, they need to be multiplied, and that will tell you there are 10 balls unaccounted for. Okay, bit stingy 2 marks for that. Should be a 3 marker for me. Gary owns a garage, etc., etc. On Saturday, he had 72 petrol, 48 diesel. Right, petrol to diesel in its simplest form. Always, as I do, make sure you get the order correct. When you divide these, if you don't like your times tables, stick to dividing by 2s and dividing by 3s. You will eventually get to the right answer. But if you can, the quickest way is to spot the biggest numbers possible. These are both in the, well, there's a number bigger, but they're both in the 12 times table. 24 is the best number to use, but they're both in the 12 times table. Divide the 72 by 12. Divide the 48 by 12, you're nearly there, because as I've said, the best number. They are both in the 24 times table, but you're probably not familiar with that. You just might spot it because you've seen these numbers before. They are quite popular. But we've now got 6 to 4. They're both even. Divide them by 2, and that's what you need for your 2 marks. What percentage are diesel? Diesel is the second number. We've had this before. They must have a thing for 40% on this paper, because 2/5 times the bottom by 20, same to the numerator. Like I said, we've already had 2/5 converting to 40% on an earlier question, and we've got it again. Number 12, I'm looking at 12%. Number 17, just go old school. Keep it simple. It works. Find 10% by dividing by 10. You could go to 2% next, but I'm going to keep it old school. Divide by 10 again, you get 7.5. And that now gets doubled. So to find 12%, we add together 75 and 15, because that's 12%. £90. Part B is a weird one. Not entirely clear what you need to do. It's basically saying when something is added to something, the answer is something. So if A is added to B, you get C. But we know when a fraction is added to 2/5, we get 7/15. So although it's mentioning adding, it's not an add question. To find the missing number, you need to do a subtract. 7/15 minus 2/5. The 7/15 can stay the same. We need to convert the 2/5. 5 goes into 15 quite nicely. That's by trebling it, times it by 3. So treble the top. And there we go. 7 of something minus 6 of something gives you 1 of that something. But yeah, it's a minus question, even though it mentions adding. Number 18, handful of ways of doing this one. Here's my logic. Area of the base is 150. Could draw it on or write it on the top. I'm going to do it down there. Water is leaking at a constant rate, so it's not speeding up or slowing down. But notice every 15 minutes, it loses 3 centimetres of height. So whatever that is, it's losing 3. That means at 10:30, it'll be 3 lower. 10:45, same. And most importantly, at 11. 10:15 is 17 centimetres high. It'll go down another 3. Down another 3. So at 11 a.m., the height will be 8 centimetres. How do we work out the volume? The volume is normally length times width times height, but we don't need. It's just 150, the area of the face, times by 8. Now that will give us the answer in centimetres cubed. So be careful. Now, if you're not aware, the conversion for centimetres cubed to millilitres is the world's easiest. They are the same. There is no conversion to do, just replace the units. Why do we need to do that? Because it does ask specifically for litres. Millilitres to litres is divide by 1,000. That's going to take us to 1.2. Number 19, we have a bar chart, 120 people doing a puzzle. Whenever I see bar charts, whether it's an early question or a later one like this, I just, by habit, like to write down the frequencies so that when I'm reading the waffle later on, I don't have to read them off. But a person is chosen at random. What's the probability they took less than 15 minutes? It's these 3 bars I needed. 20 plus 30 plus 40. There are 90 people in completing this puzzle. And as you can see right back at the top, there are 120. And that's where you leave it. Yes, it simplifies, but do they ask you to? So don't. Number 20. You must give reasons. As always, I've written this question, my solution out in full on my PDF file, so follow a couple of links. You'll see me having written it out for these. It takes ages to write out with the electronic pen. I'll just read it out. Firstly, spotting that is opposite angles. So angle AEF is 80 degrees. Why? Because opposite angles are equal. Now look what you've got. Okay. Now I refer to these as co-interior. Different teachers refer to them as different things, but I've always been using correctly because there's loads of different phrases for them. But I would simply be stating now co-interior angles add to make 180. Hence, parallel. That's why it's a tricky question. It's only worth 2 marks, so it's not a 4 or 5 step question. Number 21. We've got these lads measuring loads of leaves. Read all the waffle. Why do they need to agree on these conditions? So lots of things you could write. On my original, I've put to ensure consistent results or data. You could keep it more simple and go to make it a fair study. Words to that effect, but an element of fair or consistent is what the examiner is looking for. We look at David's scatter diagram, you can tell straight away it's all over the place. Good luck trying to draw a line of best fit on there. If you actually drew one, it'd be wrong because there is definitely no correlation on David's. One of the boys collected his leaves from one tree. Well, it certainly wasn't David. David's all over the place. So, what's the reason? Well, because as ifs shows correlation. As you can see, I know I've cheated, but there's a definite line going on in his scatter diagram. Or you could criticise David's and say David's has no correlation. But again, don't need to write loads of waffle. It's only worth a mark. Part I, draw a line of best fit. There's lots of leeway, so don't overcomplicate. Just like I mentioned with the drawing a graph earlier though, make sure you make your line long enough. It needs to go past all the data. Don't stop too soon. Then we've got a length of a leaf is 7. You need to use your line of best fit, trace it along and down. 7's there, so as you can see I'm getting about 7.4 for my answer. And the reason why I'm saying don't take too much time worrying about your line of best fit is the mark scheme allows a heck of a lot of leeway, as always, between 7 and 9 inclusive. Number 22. Quite reasonably waffly for a question like this. It's only a straightforward one in my opinion. What you've got, P, O and L in the order of lemonade, pineapple and orange. How much pineapple? Go back here. Pineapple is 2 shares out of the 10 shares available. If you want to work out 10 shares, divide by 10. So 1 share of this ratio is worth 33 millilitres. Pineapple is 2 shares. We need to double it. Number 23. The diameter of each semicircle there is 12. So all the way around, we have a 12 by 12 square. The question says, work out the area. Well, there's the bit in the middle. In the middle, you have a 12 by 12 square, 12 times 12, 144. It's the circles that are your problem. Now, the first thing to notice, yes, there are 4 half circles, but 4 halves means 2 whole circles. 2 whole circles, well, you know the formula for 1. Like that. Trouble is, 12 is the diameter, so 6 is the radius. Let's work out the answer to the shape. It wants the whole number first. That's the square bit. And we need to do pi multiplied by the radius squared multiplied by 2. Whoops. So we can just go straight to the answer. 6 sixes are 36, doubled are 72, and it wants the answer in terms of pi. So you can just ignore that and plonk it on your answer. Number 24. As soon as I see the words volume and density, there's only one thing I'm doing. Density, mass, volume. The block has mass. We need to work out the mass by taking the density and multiplying it by the volume. That's quite a hard sum. I'll just do 75 times 7 instead. 7 5s are 35. 7 7s are 49. Add the 3. And that'll be 7.5 times 7. There we go. We need to multiply that answer because we've ignored the 2 zeros. We need to multiply it by 100. And don't forget, that's in grams per centimetres cubed. You need to divide it by 1,000 to get kilograms. The block of mass, the block has a mass less than 5. Is answer correct? Nope. And we've already explained why. Number 25, pretty straightforward if I'm honest. Unusually, because it doesn't come up very often, it wants it in index form. If you haven't seen that before, that's why you revise. 12 5s are 60. The 5 is prime. There's going to be a 5 in the answer. 4 3s are 12. So there's only 1 5, so no powers. There's a 3 and no more. But instead of as normally, you normally write 2 times 2. Because of that, index and indices means it needs powers in your answer. Number 26. it tells you it's an equilateral triangle. Stop. Don't read ahead. That means that these are the same size, which most importantly means that 2x plus 3 is equal to 8. You don't need to read on. You can subtract 3 from both sides, halving both sides. X is worth 2.5. We can now move on to the square. They're all the same because it's a square. We can make the statement that 7x minus 5y must be the same as 10. But hold on. We know what x is. Let's do 2.5 times 7, either mentally or your own way, whatever's preferable to you. I get 17.5. I don't like having to solve when there's a negative 5y, so add 5y to both sides, and also minus 10 from both sides. We're nearly there. To find the value of y, we need to take the 7.5 and divide it by 5. Hey presto, x is 2.5, y is 1.5. Not quite simultaneous equations, but it is getting there. 27. Absurd, but if it was 7x and you trebled it, it'd become 21x. Well, it behaves just the same. 7 things times 3 give you 21 of those things. So if you haven't seen one of them before, that's how I go about it. Factorise. Now, it's late on in the questions, later in the paper, but this is not a double bracket question. To be a double bracket question, you don't have x's and y's in the same thing. You'd also have a number on the end. So for multiple reasons, this is a single bracket question. The only question is, what goes on the outside, what goes on the inside, because there's a heck of a lot going on. Here's how I go about it. Think of 3xy squared as 3 times x times y, and 6 times x times x. Now focus on the numbers. They're both in the 3 times table. Divide that by 3, you get 1. Divide that by 3, you get 2. So numbers-wise, there's a 1 left over and a 2 left over, but you don't need the 1. What else is in common? There's an x and an x, get it out. There's a y and a y, out it comes. What are your leftovers? First term, there's a y. Second term, there's an x. Job done. Number 29. Now, if I said to you, I think of a number, times it by 4, and I get 20, to work out my number, you would need to do 20 divided by 4. And that's what this question is. It's dividing in standard form. You need to do the biggest, 9.6, times 10 to the 8, and divide it by 2.4 times 10 to the 5. You must do the numbers first. 9.6 divided by 2.4. How many 24s go into 96? 4. So 9.6 divided by 2.4 is 4, which fortunately is between 1 and 10. So the answer is going to be in standard form. We just need to work out the power. When it's a divide, you subtract the powers. 8 take away 5, gives you 3. On we go. We're doing a probability tree. It says, if that's 0.4, get that 0.6 in straight away. The word independent is a complicated word. I'm not going to go into it now. It simply means you can multiply when you go down branches. But you knew that anyway. The probability she goes on a train and goes to the theatre is 0.28. So there must be something in here. When we multiply by 0.4, there we go. So 7 4s are 28, but you don't have probabilities of 7. 0.7, which now means you can fill that, and that. You can now move on to part B. Calculate the probability. Does not go on a train and does not go to the theatre. It's the bottom branch multiplied by the bottom branch again. 6 3s are 18. 2 numbers are after the decimal points in the question. The answer needs 2 as well. And finally, last page, a couple of little questions. Show that they are parallel. Straight away. Tough question if you don't know it. They need to be in the y equals mx plus c form. You need them both to say y equals. The left-hand side, the left equation is the hardest. Let's add 12x, add 12x to both sides and divide both sides by 3. Over here, only one step. Divide everything by 2. 13 halved, 6.5, or leave it a fraction. That's not the bit we're interested in. And there you go. To show they are parallel, just needs a statement. I would go, both have a gradient of 4. And that is proof that they are parallel. On we go. Number 32. I like to do this one by logic. 9 identical pumps going down to 3 pumps means if you've got fewer pumps doing the work, 3 times fewer pumps, it's going to take 3 times longer. But the amount of work they're needing to do is going from emptying 8 tanks to 2 tanks. That's a quarter of the work. So the amount of time that would require needs dividing by 4. They're the key steps. 2 hours to do the job. Multiply it by 3 means 6 hours. How do you divide by 4? Halve it and halve it again. So 6 hours halves to 3 hours, which halves to 1.5 hours. Now you could have done a lot of multiplying for that question, but I like that logical way. Keeps the numbers a bit more sensible. As usual with Eduqas, an extremely wordy question and a couple of tough ones in the last sort of 4 or 5. Overall, not a bad paper, but I do believe Eduqas, they can look unfriendly with the amount of words. The maths, you've just got to get over the words because the maths is okay. Not a bad paper in this great scheme of things. But anyway, that's the non-calc. Calculator next. Hopefully that's helped. See you on the next one.